Alrighty, there we go. Hey, this is Benjamin on my channel Heterodox Vigor. Today decided to go ahead and do a little video. So the topic is once again one of our traditional stories. In this case, um, of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, and of course, tempted by the snake and all of the problems that come from that, right? There's so much we can look at there, and I'm sure we'll take multiple looks at that particular narrative. Today, specifically, what I was inspired to talk about, talking with my buddy Larry. Hey, Larry. And he brought up the absent father aspect, right? Where if you look at the structure of the story, what happens? What happens is dad gives the rules. Dad spills the wisdom on, hey, do this, don't do that. If you do that thing that we told you not to, there's going to be consequences. You're not going to like them. They're things that are bad, and trust me when I say they're bad. Like, you'd have to experience them for yourself to really firsthand know, understand, live the badness of the bad that you're going to get from it. But just trust me, you don't want to go there. Well, I mean, we all know where that went, which is, of course, you have that other narrative coming in there, and it's telling a different story, right? And it's a different story about the same set of facts, if you remember, because what was the serpent was like, oh no, see, it'll make you like God, and you want to be like God, right? I mean, if God's a cool guy, then of course you want to be like him. And I mean, if he's not a cool guy, well, you know what? Maybe he's trying to hide something from you. Like, either way, it's worth your while. Give it the plunge, give it the go for it, right? Yeah. Well, so we all know how that story goes, but one of the aspects that people don't really look at necessarily all that often is the fact that, like, why was the snake given that opportunity to go and have a conversation in the first place? Well, because they got out from the watchful eyes of the father, right? So you have a situation where, after giving passing on the wisdom, right, then the father is not always present. And so now you have those who were given the instructions, in this case the children of God, right, given the instructions from the heavenly father. Hey, let, right? He goes, okay, now what? So you have a different figure come in telling a different story. The snake didn't get an opening when the father was necessarily there, right? The snake didn't show up when the father was there and could answer what it was that the snake was saying, right? Because first of all, like, father had dealt with snakes before, and I mean, in this case, heavenly father knows what a snake is. Oh, but it's interesting because, in a way, this reveals something else, because it reveals, of course, God was all knowing. So the father knew that when he left the kids without supervision, that they would be facing the kinds of temptations that come from believing a different story, of telling a different story about what is going on. It doesn't even have to necessarily change the facts themselves if you can put a different spin on what the meaning of what was happening really is. It's we could go through a whole list of examples where the actions are the same, but the meaning is going to be different for different people, because things mean something to someone, right? And your meaning is going to be of a very specific nature, right? There's an idea, your ideas are built off of, so to speak, ideas that have been used with you by other people. That's kind of the way that human knowledge works, right? And so we have the opportunity to pass on this knowledge generation to generation, and we need to do that because when we aren't there to pass that on, and we aren't there to answer our kids' questions when someone else is trying to tell them a different story, then they could very easily be led astray in ways that are going to have negative consequences. But here's the thing, the idea isn't therefore shelter your kids all the time. No. Teach your kids to deal with snakes. Teach your kids to deal with, like, hey, listen, there's a reason why the cheese on the mousetrap is free, right? You have to teach your kids to some extent. If it's too good to be true, you're probably misunderstanding where the costs are coming from, right? Like if the price is too low for what you're getting, you're probably failing to identify part of what that price actually is, whether it's to you or to someone else. So the idea here is that part of the necessary moving forward of generational history is going to be that at some point or another, dad's going to have to move on, whether that's dad has something important to do because he's a grown adult in society, whether that is, dad has to go sacrifice himself in a war and never comes home, whether that's dad just gets older eventually and old people don't live forever. Whatever your reason is, you're going to have to move on from dad. And realistically, if you wait too long to have that, where you step away from learning the rules and you go out and test yourself in the world and start to apply it to actually living your life, you need your kids prepared for that, because it is going to happen someday. And if you put it off for too long, they won't have enough practice, and they won't have the kind of experience and wisdom that comes with practice by the time that they're trying to bring this wisdom to their own children. So from that perspective, the message of the absent father in the Garden of Eden is twofold. On the one hand, if he was always absent, if he never even gave them the rules, those poor kids don't stand a chance. Like, the snake's just going to get them. If the snake has the best story out there and the kids don't even know what a snake is, if you never told your kids what a snake is, like, good luck with that, right? Like, the snake will tell your kids, like, they'll be like, hey, do you like desirable things? I'll tell you what, you do it my way and you'll get the things that you desire. And look at how low the costs are. Look at these costs that you will pay, only of course listing the ones that they want to talk about and completely playing dumb on all of the other costs that just, aren't convenient to talk about, because hey, in sales, like, you overcome reluctance, right? But you don't rebuttal an objection that the customer never made. If you can tell the customer is about to make it, well, sure, like, you can rebuttal an argument they're about to make, but you don't bring up arguments that they weren't going to if you're trying to sell them on something, right? And in the same way, the snakes that are trying to sell your kids on stuff, they won't bring up the things that would cause your kid to be like, oh, so there might be a deeper cost to that we're not. No, they're not going to bring that up. So that falls on you. And I mean, honestly, as an older person in society, to the extent that you get to have serious conversations with younger people, that haven't had that same perspective and experience that you have, like pay it forward, right? Pay it forward. Like don't and remember, the attitude is not, hey kid, I can tell you what to do because I know now. No, 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 no. The idea is, hey kid, I've seen a lot of people get hurt. I just thought you might want to know. One of the ways that people pretty reliably get hurt is that. And unless you want that, probably try to set up some sort of a railing between where you have your life and where that is, right? Like have some sort of a line, a barrier, something that is going to reliably keep you on that side instead of that side. And again, it's important not just because of like, yeah, I hope we all care about our own kids, but our kids are going to live in a society, and that society is going to be made up of other people's kids. And so I do not buy into the attitude that, well, it doesn't really matter what's going on with other people's kids. No, that's your neighbor 20 years from now, right? That's your kids, that's your grandkids neighbor 40 years from now, whatever. Like we all benefit from improving our own environments, and to the extent that we can have a society that we're happy to live in, or we can just if no one cares, like there will be a sorting, and there's always going to be different levels if no one cares and different levels of sortings. But already you have like the betrayal pattern of a lot of the areas that how should I put it nicely? A lot of the areas with the highest income inequality and wealth inequality and all that, like, are going to be areas that theoretically like say a lot of nice things about like trying to help little people and trying to make sure that the big people are doing their share and all that jazz. And I think that when we look out there, what we more commonly find is if you look at communities where they actually care enough to give their neighbors' kids good life advice, that's the society that you want to live in. You want to live in a society where there's, for the principle of wanting a nice community, people who actually go out of their way to make sure that needs in the community are met. And you'll notice that I'm not saying that the government's doing it, because yeah, sometimes the government might be the answer, but that's where I'm coming from, is that yeah, it's true that some people that want to help others will end up being involved in and supporting government programs to do that, but that the people that are really serious about helping others are going to do that on their own with their own resources, because that's part of what they've chosen to do with their own lives, making the world a better place, making the world more the type of place that you want it to be, being the change in the world, paying forward everything that people have done for you that you didn't get a chance to pay back directly. You pay it forward. I mean, there are so many reasons to engage in pro-social behavior that, by the way, are essentially selfish. Like I got to give Ayn Rand credit for that one, right? That at the end of the day, if you want to have a nice life and a nice future, you're going to try to turn the environment that you're living your life in, including the people that are going to be in that environment, and try to turn it into what you want for the future, good stuff. And I think that it's important that, like I said, we both we're there. We're there. Hey, if you're a father, be a father. If you're involved with someone who doesn't have a father, be as much of a father as they need you to be, as long as it's not hurting your own obligations that you have towards your own life and your own family. And again, the flip side is you can't not shelter your kids. You need to arm your kids for the battles of the future. You don't want your kids to be scared by the baddies. You want your kids to be alarmed by the baddies, but they need to say, I know this monster. I know how to deal with this monster. I'm confident. I know what kind of lies it's going to tell me and why the things it says are lies and what the truth actually is. That's the position that you want your kids in when they're facing the monsters of the world, right? And that is, like I said, two-part. You got to be there for them, but you also have to make sure that they're able to face their own battles and get some experience in that. Hopefully while you're still around to help them out, right? So if you really are sheltering them until they're grown, you need to have some thoughtful discussions with them at a much, much earlier age if you want to be confident that they're going to face those snakes with what they need to walk away from that with less screwed up lives. That is the shape of what I take out of that lesson here. And again, as I know there's a lot of double-edged ideas regarding the type of fatherless children, especially young men who go on to make terrible mistakes and treat others poorly and make themselves unsuitable to just live in society. And they end up getting locked up somewhere, probably after victimizing people. And we got, that's not random. That's not an accident. And to the extent that we don't prioritize having that explainer and example of the rules of what it means to be a man in our society, to the extent that there are kids out there not getting that, it's not a mystery. We have a lot of evidence on that is the pattern of their behavior as a group. And of course, it's an aggregate. Not everybody who's thrown into that certain set of just nasty circumstances is going to choose to do the wrong thing and hurt other people. But when you start looking at the incentives and the cultural influences and frankly the genetics, more likely than not, there's the deck is stacked against them. And I think that if we can, if we can realize that and have some compassion and try to have some patience for people who've been told really untrue things for a very long time, kind of sorting through and figuring out how they can make better decisions today. Like, don't get me wrong, if someone's victimizing people and you try to give them another chance and they just keep victimizing people, like, throw the book at them. But I think it's really important, especially when, sometimes people really were put in a tough situation and the incentives were stacked against them and they did something risky to try to avoid a loss of some sort, and that risk didn't pay out and they ended up losing big, and like the answer was for them to never be in that situation in the first place. And if they're going to get out and try to move on with their life after being locked up because they had themselves in a situation where all of their answers were going to be bad for them, like, part of that is learning in the future, how do they put themselves in a situation where they actually have an option to do the right thing without getting screwed over by bad people, which frankly might start with try to spend less time around bad people. There's all sorts of potential for where we can bring this into the world, and we can make our society better if we have an open eye for why we needed the father figures in the first place and what's probably missing from people's lives when they're not there. And if we really care about these people, instead of them just being mosquitoes to be swatted at when they draw blood, then I think that's where we have to start, is trying to directly acknowledge and support people who have those deficits. So anyway, like I said, the story generally is probably one that I'll come back to many times, but that particular aspect I was reminded of and felt like making a video today. And thanks to anyone who stayed and watched and listened, and I'll catch you later. Take it easy.